Okay, I can kind of see the 86 being allowed to go back to the battlefield, but really, nobody's protesting Frederica going back? This girl's like, what, 12 years old? That's fine, I guess. This is my thoughts on episode 2 of 86 second season, so let's jump right into it. So yeah, pretty much a lot of this focus of this episode is really kind of zoning in on the 86 now being at peace in the Giad Federation, and so much of the focus is really on each individual one finding something to essentially focus on as they're now no longer on the battlefield. Obviously, we have Kurina is seemingly just getting into fashion, I guess, just picking out new clothes over and over and over again. Theato obviously doing a lot of drawing. Raiden getting a job and doing a lot of moving stuff. Anju getting into cooking, and Shin going to the library and seemingly looking up a lot of books about military and stuff. And through this process, Shin eventually meets Eugene, and Eugene essentially is somebody that's poor within the city, and even still, at some point, Shin ends up finding out that Eugene wants to actually go into the military. And so you kind of draw on this comparison, the idea that obviously the 86 were forced to fight for their country, whereas Eugene actually wants to fight for his country to protect his sister. We also have a funny moment on the sidelines. You essentially have Frederica essentially watches a television show where they show this news reporter, and this girl just pretty much forces the boyfriend to buy her something by basically using her female charms. And so she decides to use this on both Shin and, at some point, Raiden, to essentially force them to buy her stuff or make her stuff, which was kind of doofy because she couldn't really keep it up. And also at some point, Shin has a dream. And in this dream, he's confronted by several of his previous comrades who are all still on the battlefield. They're all still harvested. Their ghosts still remain on the battlefield. And while they want him to move on and leave them behind, they still have a fear of living on stuck in this area and wanting to go home themselves. So obviously this aspect weighs heavy on him. And similarly, it weighs heavy on everybody else. As it goes along, you start seeing them feel restless. They no longer feel like this is something they want to do. At some point, I was surprised that it was Kurina was the first one to really bring it up. She comes forward to them and says, look, I've done everything that I want to do. Let's go back. Let's go back. This is essentially not the place they want to be. And as they bring this up to Ernst, obviously his idea is, look, you guys have the option here to be at peace. You don't have to go back to the battlefield, which I guess goes against my theories of him being manipulative. I guess he technically still could be manipulative. It could be one of those things where he walks behind the door and suddenly goes, yes, all according to plan. I wanted to force them to stay here. That way they'll be stronger in the battlefield. But no, he just pretty much says, why would you want to do that? You have the option here to be free. You don't have to go to the battlefield. And they're all like, look, this is great and everything, but we can't face those that we've lost if we're just here enjoying this freedom. The battle's still going on. We can't ignore this. We have to go back out there. So he agrees to it, but he says on one term that they all go to the academy and become officers because he's still looking to their future, and the idea if they become officers rather than just regular enlisted soldiers, they have more benefits and more options to them in the future when the war ends, which obviously to them, they're like, wait, the ending of the war. It was also interesting to have at some point Frederica kind of pushes against Ernst's denial of this option of going back to the battlefield because she's like, look, you're doing the same thing as them. They went from a cage of oppression and now you're putting them in a cage of pity. If this is what they want to do, you should allow them to do it. And this is where it gets a little weird. I guess at this point I'm really kind of questioning if Frederica is like the symptom of anime. Like, how old is Frederica? I mean, it obviously seems like she's like, 12 years old or something like that, but she just talks very much so in like these poetic ways. I'm assuming it's just because of her upbringing, obviously, as, Empress. But yeah, she talks a lot of truth, but at the same time steps forward and says to all of them, this is my full name. I was the Empress of the previous Giad Empire, and I was the one that ordered all the legions to attack your hometown 10 years ago. And I'm thinking like, what, when you were 2 years old? And sure enough, I think Raiden asked the same thing. So how old were you when you made those orders? Which totally throws her off. But also the idea that, look, it wasn't the Legion that put us in the situation we were. It was the Magnolia. The Magnolia is the ones that made the districts and forced us to fight. Which is kind of a nice little response to the whole thing. Because obviously the big threat there is like suddenly, Shin goes, oh, you're the one that caused my brother to go through all this. And and I think that's what she was intending for it to happen. I'm not sure why she was trying to throw that on herself. I'm guessing just trying to accept her own family's decisions, like what they made and what they did. My parents and my grandparents, what they did is technically inherited to me. and so I'm responsible for everything that happened with the Legion. But yeah, when Raiden pretty much responds like this, she's like, I respect your guys' pride. Please take me with you. Help me take out the ghost of my knight. And that, of course, is Kiria. And Kiria apparently was her knight, and he was harvested. He's on the battlefield. She says, you fought him once before. And he's like, well, how do you know that? Well, I have the eyes. In my bloodline, I have the ability to see the past and the present of anybody. And I seen that you were on the battlefield with Kiria. He was apparently the one that was shooting the turrets that was destroying the heck out of everybody in the last bits of that first season. And she also mentioned the fact that she had seen visions of his brother and the scars on his neck, so she knew all about that stuff. And yeah, it pretty much ends with them all leaving in officer outfits. So again, we pretty much skipped the whole conversation of why they're letting Frederica leave and go to the military, which is a big question mark. We're just completely throwing out the whole training montage of going to the school, which I actually like. I didn't really want too much. I was totally expecting, here we go, episode 3 and 4 is training in the officers' school and figuring out if they have the ability to do it or not. They're just skipping right forward. Now, granted, there is something that's lost there in the idea of there's a lot of conversation to be had with them joining this schooling. Obviously, the teachers and stuff would probably know who they are, and there might be some combativeness between, Shin, who is somebody who has led people on the battlefield for many, many years, and he's now going to be taught by a teacher who probably doesn't even have any battleground experience. So it's one of those things where there's probably some conflicts and some cool things they could have dived into with that aspect. Basically, a soldier who's already seen bloodshed and gone through a lot of stuff, now being taught by somebody who probably doesn't have any knowledge of it. Even still, I'm perfectly fine with this. There's a lot more storytelling that I want to get into besides that. That's like the least of the things that I'm really curious about. What I'm curious about is what's on the battlefield and what's going on with Sam Magnolia and how these two sides will probably eventually come to a head. Because obviously now they're part of the Giad, and they're going to go on the battlefield while both sides are fighting the Legion. Eventually, the Giad and the Magnolia are going to run into each other. And what happens then? Yeah, the hope there is it's probably going to be, probably Shiden that's going to bump into probably Shin, and then there's going to be a hope that he calls out and says, hey, do you know Lina? And then they can come together. So, but yeah, like I said, the only thing that was really kind of in this episode is like, I knew that eventually Frederica was going to end up on the battlefield with them. My thought process was going to be that probably Ernst was going to be overthrown. Like they were going to see that Ernst was, keeping all these people from the other side of the battlefield. Obviously, the previous Empress, keeping them in his home, and they were going to overthrow him because they felt that he was a threat to their peace and their structure. But they didn't really do that. It just kind of has Ernst go, okay, everybody join. Oh, Frederica too? All right, go. Which doesn't really make sense to me. I would think, especially the kingdom itself, if they knew who Frederica was, why would they be okay with her not being under somebody's check? Because she could essentially create an uprising. That's a bloodline of the previous rulers. If they get out and they find people that will support her, they could easily take back over the kingdom. Now, granted, who would want the Giad Empire to come back? That's the big question mark, because they're obviously doing very well, but there's still some people that would be radicals that would be okay with that idea. So it doesn't make much sense why they would be okay with just letting her go. It's all right. I'm fine with it. I'm just going to kind of overlook it and kind of move on. I'm excited to see what's coming up, and just to not dwell on a lot of that stuff, I guess, is perfectly fine. It is going to be really interesting to see how well they do on the battlefield now that they're going to essentially have better equipment. I don't know if it's going to be one of those things where they get to the equipment shack and then they start pulling parts off of stuff going, this is too much weight, this is too much weight, this is too much weight. Or if they're going to end up getting that new model that lady was talking about that is supposed to be extremely fast. That would be my assumption, because they went out of their way to point out, like, your stuff is way too big. I have a prototype that's really fast. I want them to try it out. The other big question mark is that technically they're all supposed to be officers, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be together. Now, granted, officers don't necessarily have to have their own platoon, but typically they would. And so the idea of them maybe marching in together seems a little bit off, unless they decide to kind of drop rank to fall behind Shin, and they get, maybe Ernst gets them a pass to allow them to do that. But yeah, once on the battlefield, always on the battlefield. I really was curious if they were going to really play heavily on PTSD. I think there was only one really point where they had the robots kind of marching, and the sound effects of those robots were really loud. So they were kind of emphasizing very heavily on the idea of when something like this happens, it triggers a thought process to look over for them. So obviously their mind is still in the battlefield. So I was really expecting them to play more heavily on that, but it seemed like they adapted much more easily to where they were at rather than being kind of stuck in the middle. Maybe that's just a tribute to the fact that in their previous life, they were always kind of going back to the barracks and trying to enjoy themselves before they would go back into the battlefield. So maybe they have more of a sense of that back and forth than most people would, but it is curious that they didn't play as heavily on PTSD aspects in their trying to live peacefully than they actually did. Technically, they did on the idea that it's restlessness, this idea of they're essentially raised there, and that's just their life. That's all they've ever known. And so they don't feel comfortable not being there. Though again, the end message was that they can't leave their friends behind. They can't. They have to go back and get them. So that's my thoughts on episode 2 of 86, second season. Hope you guys enjoyed this impressions. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon if you can. Or if you can, go down in the description. There's a tip button there where you can help us support us directly through there. But I hope you all enjoyed, and y'all take care.